Hello. Last time I ended my session on the topic of items buried in the ground and intended to stay there. So grave goods, for instance. Some valuable items, either buried in the ground or perhaps deposited in water, we can be reasonably sure the purpose was ritual. These were votive offerings, and several finds have emerged from the River Thames, and the particular stretch between Battersea and Waterloo has produced several items. Look at these mace-heads. This little collection dates from 5,000 years ago. It's Neolithic. It would have taken a huge amount of effort to shape, to smooth and to perforate these stones. Other finds from the River Thames in this area include a bronze sword, dates to about 1200 BC. And then there is the Butterc Shield. The original is in the British Museum, but there is a replica in the London Museum. It's a little bit over 3 feet high. It's made of wood, but it is covered in sheet bronze, and the bronze has been decorated in the Celtic Tène style. It dates to around about 200 BC. And then we have the Waterloo helmet. Highly unlikely that this was designed for wear in battle, much more likely to be ceremonial. Now there's a famous site at Flag Fen in Cambridgeshire. It was discovered in 1982 and excavated by Francis Pryor. And what he uncovered was a causeway that led out over the wetlands, and either side there were lots of valuable deposits: swords, spears, earrings, brooches. And Francis Pryor has suggested that what might have been happening here was competitive, if you like, all about status. Who could afford to throw away the most valuable object? Now, when it comes to grave goods, pottery is the most common find and remains of food, but other things do turn up: weapons, jewellery, animals, and very, very occasionally a chariot. And this particular chariot burial, which dates to about 300 BC, was discovered near the village of Wetwang in East Yorkshire, and the grave contained the body of a female. Was she a warrior, or is the chariot merely a symbol of status? Now, in 2001, a grave was excavated 3 miles from Stonehenge, and it turned out to contain the richest collection of grave goods from the early Bronze Age ever found in this country. It also contained the earliest gold ever found in Britain. It was discovered by a team from Wessex Archaeology, and they were excavating the site in advance of building development. There are now a school and houses on the site, and 1 or 2 Roman finds had turned up in the area. This is what they were expecting to find, but instead they came across a beaker pot dating to 2,500 years before the Romans. They got even more excited when they found the 2 pieces of gold, which are thought to be hair tresses, and they worked through the night to get the finds raised by the light from their car headlamps. And the finds were taken back to be recorded and cleaned and analysed, and experts from across the country have been involved in the interpretation of these objects. Now, the man in the grave been buried 4,500 years ago, and he has been dubbed the Amesbury Archer. This is an artist's impression of what he might have looked like. Now, among the items found in the grave, there were 3 copper knives. You can see them here with replicas, and there were 2 sandstone wrist guards. Now, these would have fitted on the man's forearm, and they're to protect his arm from the recoil of his bow. Close to the man's face were 2 beaker pots. They are properly called Bell-Beaker pots, with a similarity to an inverted bell shape. They're decorated with horizontal lines, and these are created by pressing a finely plaited cord into the clay while it is still damp. They're drinking vessels, and they are so typical of this period that they give their name to the culture that arrives with them, beaker culture. They're a defining feature of the early Bronze Age. Also by his head was a red deer spatula. This would have been used for working flints, and there were some flint tools, some unworked flint blanks and some arrowheads. The flints included scrapers, other tools and a striker light, so this man could set a fire. And there were some boar's tusks. Now behind his back there was another beaker pot, some more flint tools and a cushion stone. Now this is a smooth stone used as a portable anvil for working metal. And scattered throughout the grave 15 barbed and tanged arrowheads. This is another innovation that arrives about 4,500 years ago in Britain with beaker culture. There were 2 more beaker pots by the man's feet. Not unusual to find a beaker pot in a Bronze Age grave. This man had got 5. By his knees there was another wrist guard. Everything this man would need in the next life. His tools, spare flints, weapons and pottery. Tests on the bones showed that when this man died he was aged around 45 and he was suffering from an abscess on his jaw, and sometime in the past he had dislocated his left kneecap and he would have walked with a very stiff left leg which would have swung out to the side of him. Analysis of his tooth enamel showed that he had grown up in Central Europe, somewhere in the Alps region. Now this man is important for several reasons. He lived at a time that the first metals are being brought to Britain. He is buried 3 miles from Stonehenge at the very time the monument is being constructed. He may have had a hand in planning the monument or even helped in erecting the stones. Perhaps Stonehenge is the reason he was drawn to the area, certainly well acquainted with the site. Is an example of the people who bring the beaker culture to Britain, but he is more than just a trader. This man can work metal. One of the first people in Britain to be able to work gold. This would have given him tremendous status. We don't know how long he spent in Britain, only that his childhood was spent in the Alps. But a second skeleton was found nearby. Now this turned out to be a younger man, aged between 20 and 25, and very closely related to the archer, almost certainly his son. But analysis of the bones showed that this man had grown up in the Stonehenge area, which suggests that our archer had been here for some time. Now the Amesbury Archer and his grave goods are on permanent display at Salisbury and South Wiltshire Museum. And in my next session I'm going to look at a dig that provides us with an unprecedented glimpse into life in Britain in the late Bronze Age. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click the notification bell to be informed when the next video is published.